Over the coming months, I will be tag teaming with Aidan to create an epic series where I will be playing and talking about all of Sonic's mainline games, and Aidan will be talking about all of Mario's mainline games. And they will be airing back to back and be known as Sonic Sundays and Mario Mondays. I hope you enjoy what we have to say about these series that we love very much. And I especially can't wait to talk, play, and share my current day thoughts, opinions, and experiences I have with these games, and I am sure Aidan will express the same about Mario. Today, I will be focusing on Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Knuckles Chaotix, and finally, Sonic 3D Blast. I will be playing these games on my Super Nintendo Mini because it's funny and will probably make someone mad.
Gotta go.
Hey, guy, you're the first serious gamer I've seen all morning. Check this out. Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Wow!
Oh, what's this one?
Oh, this is a Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega Genesis. Hey, look at these radical colors, huh?
Wow, Sonic's fast, too.
No, over here.
I like Genesis, and it costs a lot less.
Wait, kid, that game
I'll
there.
take Sonic and Genesis.
I knew that.
Sonic the Hedgehog. More action, more speed. Sega Genesis, it's a whole lot more for less.
In the year 1985, a video game was released by Nintendo by the name of Super Mario Bros. Stick with me, I know this is a Sonic video. Its success was massive, bringing a video game so enjoyable by kids and adults, and it wasn't two rectangles and a square on a screen. It was something no one had ever seen before. Now imagine a man named Sega Brian. Sega Brian also owns his own video game company named Brian. Brian is jealous of Nintendo's success and the release of Super Mario Bros. 3 in 1988. Nintendo had a man, while Brian only had a kid. Alex the Kid. We need something greater, Sega Brian exclaims, and demands his workforce to create a character to rival the incredible force of Mario. Sega Brian's employees submitted characters varying from armadillos, dogs, a man who resembles Theodore Roosevelt, and even a rabbit. Naoto Oshima, one of the people helping design their new mascots, took the designs they had so far and took them to New York to ask normal, everyday citizens for their feedback. He settled on a design that he called Mr. Hedgehog, and felt that it transcends race and gender and things like that. A design that felt familiar, like Felix the Cat and Mickey Mouse. Shoes with buckles that matched Michael Jackson, and colors that matched Santa Claus. And finally, a personality that matched Bill Clinton's get it done attitude. Yuji Naka helped create a prototype, and he was officially designed and named Sonic the Hedgehog and was crowned as Brian's mascot. Alright, I'm done with the joke now. Sonic 1 was released in 1991 on the Sega Mega Drive. Sonic was advertised as being fast and having an attitude your parents wouldn't approve of.
It's bad enough that Sega Genesis has the most 16-bit games, but this new Sonic the Hedgehog, oh, he really dusts my doilies. They say he's incredibly fast. Well, what's the hurry, mister? And about his attitude. Smarty pants! Why can't it be more like that nice boy Mario? Oh! Little brat!
And was directly inspired by how in Mario 1, the creator, Yuji Naka, would always blast through 1-1 because it was always the first level you would play, and always wanted to play as fast as he could to beat the game. I will be starting here like everyone else and my own mom did. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is one of the worst games I have ever had the displeasure of playing. I love Sonic, and I've played all the games when I could as I grew up, but this is not a good game. It is an amazing concept. I do believe wholeheartedly in a non-offensive way that Sonic 1 is objectively bad. While playing this game, one of the big gimmicks and something that was made a huge deal in commercials in the USA when advertising Sonic 1 was the speed. A big selling point of Sonic 1 was going fast. So why didn't they design the game this way? Green Hill Zone is a perfect example of what Sonic 1 should have been throughout the entire game. Big, open, room to speed down pathways, and going so fast you get launched into the sky. Instead, after beating Green Hill Zone, you get narrow pathways with no room to move, Obstacles that are purposefully placed to stop or make you lose progress, slow vertical segments which blow my mind because why did they make so many vertical sections when they designed their character to successfully work in a horizontal environment. It's also worth noting at this moment that this game has 3 acts, levels, per zone. Later games adopt 2 acts per zone, which is nice, because with just 1 extra level, it really feels like the game lasts way too long. Or if there is a zone that you don't particularly like playing, it feels like hell. Something I am very happy to report is that the music is wonderful. Every zone plays the same song for all 3 acts, and there wasn't a moment I felt that the music was getting annoying or that it bothered me to listen to over and over. I particularly enjoyed Scrapyard and Marble Zone's music. I will give Sonic 1 a break when it comes to its difficulty, because this is during a time where arcade machines were still dominating, so a lot of games were made difficult on purpose so that you died and had to put more quarters in to keep playing. This is very apparent when you lose all your lives, you start all the way over. Luckily, there is a cheat code for a level select. Up, down, left, right, and then start, and A together. At a certain point in the game, you notice that I deliberately stopped playing the game the way it was meant to be played. I'm actually not going fast anymore, and I'm very cautious of traps that they set to trick you into thinking that you're allowed to go fast. If you introduce a playstyle and punish the player for playing the way you just told them, you made the game wrong, straight up. There is a part in Labyrinth Zone where you get to a section where suddenly there is nowhere to go. So you check around and there are no buttons, no enemies, just water and spikes. So what do? You have to break this specific ring box that spawns a button that you can then press to unlock the door. There is no way to do this on accident. The platforms do not lead you to this specific ring box. You have to actually go out of your way to drop down and then go to the box and jump on it. And this puzzle, I use this word lightly, does not make a return, nor did it make an appearance anytime earlier in the game. Did they forget that they were making a platforming game? What is their problem? Springs that send you the opposite way, endless death pits, unforgiving platforming, terrible checkpoint placements, terrible level design. Something that made my mind rumble was the loop-de-loops were just completely missing since Green Hill. They make a reappearance in Starlight Zone after 9 entire acts. It's not anything that affects the game, I just thought it was interesting to point out. The idea for Sonic 1 was an awesome concept on paper, but I think they were too heavily inspired by the platforming designs and aspects of Mario. I didn't even finish Sonic 1, and I'm not gonna. It's that bad, and they should be ashamed of themselves for it. Let's move on to November 24th, 1992, what the world deemed as Sonic Tuesday.
Now, when you buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1, you'll get Sonic 2 absolutely free. Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too. This free Sonic 2 is a $54.99 value. You get 2 Sonics for the price of 1. Sonic 2 fits easily into any tackle box. Made from a space-age polymer plastic for years of family fun. And pets love it too. Buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1 and get Sonic 2 free.
Act now. Wiener Dog Sweater sold separately.
Sonic 2 rocks my fucking rings, bro. The music rocks, the bonus stage rocks, the level design rocks my rocks. In Sonic 2, we have a few brand new additions, most notably Miles Per Hour, also known as Tails because he can't tie his shoes. Look, no laces. He is Sonic's new buddy that you can play with or play as. This game lets you plug in another controller for 2-player play. It's not really viable because Sonic moves so fast and Tails is always being left off screen. There is no flying, even though they make this a big deal about how this is Tails' whole design point. He can even be seen flying when he gets left behind. In every future Sonic game, if there is an option to play as Sonic with Tails, you always pick Sonic with Tails. The levels in this game are so nice and so fun. While playing through it, you can tell that they had a total switch up about what it means to be a Sonic game and what makes a Sonic game fun. Room to run, less death, and more speed. In this game, the bonus stages are really cool. Whoa, half pipe, so 90s, yeah! In the bonus stage, your goal is to obtain the number of rings that it tells you to grab. This is relatively easy with a few bombs placed to make you lose rings, just for a slight challenge. Except if you are playing with Tails. If you play the bonus stage with Tails, he can also grab rings and add to your total amount of rings collected. Here's the dildo. Tails can also lose rings whenever he gets hit by bombs. This is a big pain in the ass because Tails copies your every movement, but a second later. So if you see a bomb at the last second and decide to jump out of the way, it's most likely that Tails will not have enough time to react and will also lose rings. And a couple of rings could be the difference in whether you get the Chaos Emerald or not. Speaking of the Chaos Emeralds, I have them right here. They are a brand new addition to this game and are the rewards given to you after completing the bonus stages. There are 7 of them, and after obtaining all 7, you can go supersonic after obtaining 50 rings. You're faster and invincible to all incoming damage, but you lose 1 ring for every second you are supersonic. And when you reach 0 rings, you go back to normal Sonic. Another extremely helpful new feature they added was spin dashing. Spin dashing allows you to reach a high speed from where you stand. It is so helpful whenever you see enemies lined up and you're in a spot where you don't have enough room to build up speed. It is the most useful mechanic to ever hit a Sonic game ever. With the games being more mindful of how Sonic plays and being more open, these stages are super fun and super fast paced. It might also be because this game features 2 acts per zone instead of 3, so you're not being fatigued by seeing too much of one zone. Casino Zone is awesome. It has slots and you play pinballs in it. Man, I can't stop winning. I can't stop winning. I can't stop winning. Chemical Plant and Aquatic Ruin are really good for water levels, but 2 water stages back to back, that gets 2 dooms from me. The difficulty actually gets a little more intense as you progress rather than after the first 2 levels of Sonic 1. In fact, they fixed an issue that I had personally mailed to them about having to start over from the very beginning when you run out of lives. Instead, you start at the beginning of the act you were just on. Oil Ocean, Mystic Caves, and Metropolis zones are very difficult but not frustrating. What was frustrating was the Death Egg. The Death Egg starts you off against a new enemy, Mecha Sonic, who is kinda tough. But what makes it tough is you start with 0 rings. You have no rings. There are no rings to pick up on the Death Egg, so you have to beat Mecha Sonic flawlessly without getting hit. If you think that's hard, you have to beat Mecha Sonic and the Death Egg robot without getting hit a single time. That is 3 dooms. Sonic 2 to me is a real solid Sonic game in my eyes. It is fast and can be perfectly difficult at times, but only to challenge the player and not to spite them. Except this inescapable pit of spikes in Mystic Caves. They should have stopped here, but unfortunately, I wasn't entirely truthful what was going on behind the scenes at Sega while making Sonic 2.
If you've got a Genesis, or a Game Gear, or a Sega CD, there are new Sonic games coming. As you'll see on Sonic Mania Day, they're really fast.
After the big success of Sonic 1, Sega thought it would be a good idea to split the team in half to make 2 different Sonic games. One team would remain in Japan and the other team would go to America and they would craft their own Sonic games. What were they thinking? I'm not even sure. Sonic 2 was the one that was developed in America and Sonic CD was developed in Japan. It was mostly made to demonstrate new hardware being developed for the Genesis, the Brian CD. Now let's see how this game turned out. It was okay. I think Japan's Sonic team did a very okay job. The main gimmick for this game is time travel, which is pretty huge for a game that came out in 1993, but more on that later. The game opens up with a very cool animation made by Toei, and a song to complement it, which is truly amazing to watch. One of the new things introduced is the Super Peel Out. Instead of pressing down and pressing the jump button to spin dash, you hold the up button to charge your Super Peel Out. This move does not return in any other Sonic game. Yet. We have 2 new characters to introduce. Metal Sonic, not to be confused with Mecha Sonic. They are completely different, and I would highly recommend the Game Apologist for that specific topic of robots and mechs in Sonic. and Amy Rose, the love interest for Sonic. The most notable thing about this game is how much of a fucking eyesore it is to look at. It's really nice in Act 1, but every stage after that is just random colors, and colors that don't work together, and it was legitimately hard to play after a certain point. The stages are super confusing because they decided to do more background and foreground elements that sometimes you can't really tell when you're about to run into a wall or not. A huge fix from Sonic 1 to Sonic CD was they have made the levels more open and a lot less obstacles. But at what cost? The stages are hard to see, which makes them confusing to navigate sometimes. Everything just looks like mush. I also forget to mention that this game also has 3 acts per zone, just like Sonic 1. Other than visually, this game is pretty decent. Time travel. You will find signs posted around the game labeled past or future. All you have to do is run past the sign, maintain your speed for a few seconds, and you will enter a variant of the level, either futuristic or prehistoric, depending on the sign you went past. My only problem with this is that most of these signs you encounter in this game do not give you the room or space to actually achieve a consistent speed to be able to enter either of those variants. Most of my playthrough took place in the present, and all boss stages take place in the bad future. The way to create a good future is to either go to the past and destroy all the robot generators in each act, or play all the bonus stages and collect all 7 of the time stones, which we will not be mentioning because Sega never did that after this game, so they must not be important. 2 amazing bosses in this game was one where you had to run to grind down the machine Eggman is in by running fast on a conveyor belt, and it would slowly grind down his machine. It was very cool and one of the most unique Sonic bosses so far. And there was one where you had to race against Metal Sonic to get to the end of the stage. This game was pretty decent to an extent. It felt like it was pushed from a technical perspective rather than a gameplay perspective. And I am glad Sonic 2 exists because we got to quite literally see what a version of Sonic CD would have been if they didn't focus on the technical aspects. You get a good game, and it's called Sonic 2. Learning of this mistake, they decided to take a new route to create their next Sonic game that would be their biggest yet.
Food. Sonic the Hedgehog pasta from Franco-American. Good. What are you playing for lunch?
Let's clear something real quick. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is 2 separate games. Right after Sonic 2 released, they started working on their next big game, but had time constraints because of a line of toys that were being released by McDonald's. There was a lineup of Happy Meal toys meant for the release of Sonic 3, so they needed to release the game before the toys, and they had to split the game in half and release it separately. Sonic 3 was released in February 1994, while Sonic and Knuckles were released in October 1994. Now, how did they go about releasing these if they were meant to be the same game? How does my save file work if memory cards didn't exist at the time? Well, they invented a goofy contraption where you plug the Sonic 3 cartridge directly into the top of the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge, and bam, you can play the game in its entirety. Alright, now for the game itself. The graphics already seem insane. We now have a file select featuring Sonic, Tails, and a new character, Knuckles. Each character has their own playstyle. It's very cool. Sonic has this new ability where if you press the jump button while in the air, you perform the Insta-Shield. It is a defensive and offensive move where you can protect yourself from damage while doing it. It even has a slight reach from Sonic, so you can use it to attack enemies from a safe distance. Tails can now officially fly in this game. I am not sure how they fumbled that in Sonic 2. He can even swim in water, and Knuckles can glide, climb walls, and even run through breakable walls, whereas any other character would have to spin dash through it. I also believe that if you play as Knuckles, he has his own separate storyline that takes place after Sonic and Tails' story, where he is mostly taking down and fighting off egg robos on Angel Island, while Sonic and Tails focus on Eggman. Some new features in this game, aside from how great it looks, plays, and sounds, are some new special shields. We have the Bubble Shield, which allows you to bounce, breathe underwater, and deflect projectiles. The Fire Shield lets you dash as a fireball, and even walk on lava. The Electric Shield collects rings from far away like a magnet, and you can double jump. And finally, the Subway Shield, where when you ask the Subway worker to add extra lettuce on your sandwich, they put just a little too much, enough to not dislike the sandwich, but not enough to make it enjoyable. Actually, I think that was a Mario power-up. Some of these abilities for the shield do not apply to Knuckles and Tails, which is kind of unfortunate. We start the game with Tails flying around in the tornado, and Sonic following in his super form. And damn! This dude comes flying out of the ground, punching the Chaos Emerald straight out of Sonic. This guy ain't no joke, and he is our main antagonist of this game. Someone being strong enough to punch Sonic out of his invincible super form is quite insane. There are new bonus stages that make me sick to look at, but they are very cool. The main goal is to get blue balls until they turn red, and then you get a Chaos Emerald. Now is about the time I want to talk about the music, but there's something we gotta mention before we do so. A Sonic collection has been released in the year 2022. There have been multiple collections and ports of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and CD in the early 2000s, specifically up to 2011. Where the PC Steam version of Sonic 3 was released, and it was never ported or re-released again. Sonic 1 and 2 got plenty of re-releases and game collections, but why not Sonic 3? While Sonic 3 was being developed, they were working with Michael Jackson to create the music. You heard that right. The Michael Jackson. I think you see where this is going. Basically, he made a few tracks for Sonic 3, and during the late development of Sonic 3, child abuse accusations were made against Jackson. During this time, he stepped away from the project, was uncredited, and any involvement of Jackson was denied by Sega employees. Over the years, we have heard sources here and there confirming that Michael Jackson did indeed work on the game's soundtrack. But why did this cause trouble for releasing the game on newer platforms? Well, it seemed that there was word that Jackson was unhappy with how the Genesis couldn't play back high-quality audio, and therefore chose to be uncredited. And because of the death of Jackson in 2009, it's speculated that there was then legal trouble with the Jackson estate, allowing them to release the faithful version of Sonic 3. Now, what does this all have to do with Sonic 3 and a port of Sonic 3 in 2022? Well, all the tracks in the newest release of Sonic 3, with the help of Michael Jackson, were removed and replaced with prototype versions of songs which sound infinitely worse. It's unbelievable. So when I talk about how amazing the music is in Sonic 3, it's kind of crazy to imagine a generation of kids playing these games for the first time, and the new prototype versions are their only source to go by, and it's legitimately a lesser version than the original. You might be thinking, well, if people didn't like the new version, why not just play the old versions they had previously re-released? Well, that would be wise of you to say if you weren't vouching for a company that does whatever they can to maximize their profits. They delisted and removed all prior versions of Sonic 3 online stores just so that if you wanted to play a modern version of Sonic 3, you have to buy the $30 version that's full of glitches and removed content. Man, fucking talk about anti-consumerism, dude. You can't even beat Sonic 1 as Tails because the game would crash once you got into the water and labyrinth zone. It was released rushed, unfinished, and incomplete. So if you're wondering why I'm not playing the Origins collections, it's for all these reasons. When it comes to stage design and music, this is the best 2D Sonic game so far. It leans very close to 2, and not so much Sonic CD. While playing through Sonic 3, I really didn't have any issues when it came to glitches or terrible game design. It's a very fun, awesome experience. Once you get to a halfway point in the game, after taking down the Death Egg, on Mushroom Hill, Knuckles appears to be coming from a hidden entrance. Once you enter this room, you will see a massive emerald, and if you collect the other emeralds, they will be slotted into these spots, which I did not obtain because These levels make me sick to my stomach and hurt my eyes. But you will be able to stand atop the now massive emeralds and attempt their bonus stages for a Super Chaos Emerald, which will allow you the form of Hypersonic. This never returned as it was meant for players who played Sonic 3 before the release of Sonic and Knuckles, so they had something to collect after they had already gotten the Chaos Emeralds. Here are some things I noticed while playing. Sonic in the Egg Cruiser and he pushes Knuckles off the beam. There are tons of unique animations and sprites that make this game feel so big. I really love the sand physics in Sandopolis, but fighting the thing was so dumb. All you had to do was just stand there and wait for him to slowly make his way over and jump into the sand pit. I loved the visual changes for Mushroom Hill and Lava Reef in Act 2. It was so cool. Also, I'm pretty sure most, if not all, acts had 2 separate soundtracks per zone. So it was nice hearing a track in Act 1, and then when you got to Act 2, it was like a remixed version of the first track. The Knuckles fight was very easy, and there was a cool cutscene where Eggman betrays Knuckles to steal the Master Emerald. There is a cool new Mecha Sonic who is badass looking. His name is Mecha Sonic Mark II, who is so badass looking compared to when we first saw him. Not to be confused with Metal Sonic, who is not the same robot as Mecha Sonic. But I will say, 3 games featuring a robot clone of Sonic is definitely overdoing it. 3 dooms. The game ends with Sonic beating Eggman and returning the Master Emerald to Angel Island so it can float again. With such a big game that exceeds the world's expectations in defining how big a sequel should be, it was hard to imagine where to go from here.
Where do the stars of Sega Sonic 3 go when the game's over?
Sonic? Are you guys in there?
Hey, here's a hint. They're at McDonald's in the $1.99 Sonic 3 Hamburger Happy Meal. Sonic launches with a push of a button. Tails flies who knows how high. And Robotnik barely dodges disaster. There's even this sweepstakes thing where 10,000 lucky folks will win free Sonic 3 cartridges. So if you're still looking for Sonic and his friends,
I need to report a missing hedgehog.
Take the kids to McDonald's, where what you want is what you get.
With a brand new character introduced in the previous title, it would be quite easy to come up with an idea to make a brand new video game starring the new fan favorite character. Yeah, make way for the Chaotix, son! First thing that is shown is this wonderful new cast of characters. We have Knuckles the Echidna, Espio the Chameleon, Mighty the Armadillo, Charmy Bee, and Vector the Crocodile. These guys are not just cool looking, but they also have unique abilities. Knuckles can glide and climb walls. Mighty can wall jump, Espio can run on walls and ceilings. Vector can dash through the air, and Charmy can fly and hover. Now when you start the game, it starts out like a normal Sonic game. You're Knuckles, and you run, and then all of a sudden, you are tied to an insurance mascot. Here starts the gimmick of this game. You are tethered to a second character. Think about the worst task in a video game. Did you imagine having to babysit and lead an NPC character around? You know, the ones that walk at such a speed where they are faster than your walking movement and slower than your running movement? Because I did. Now imagine an entire game based around that mission. You are constantly lugging around a character that is constantly fighting your momentum. There are some cool maneuvers and techniques you can pull off in this game, and it can be pretty fun sometimes, but the mechanic is way too ahead of its time. The physics are just a bit funky enough to make the game not enjoyable sometimes. Here are some mechanics you can pull off. Spin dashing does exist, but it seems they nerfed it, and it does not make you go as fast as previous games. Instead, you can press the A button to plant your partner down, and you can pull against them and slingshot yourself. This is going to be your main form of gaining speed. Your next move is you can actually pick up your partner and toss them in various directions. If you're trying to reach a platform, you can toss your partner upwards, and they can pull you up with a tether. With the amount of movement all these characters have, it's kinda not a good move until you realize you can actually use your partner as a lethal projectile. If you don't want to get near a boss, you can pick up your partner and toss them to do damage. Now let's take a look at the stages. This time, we have a hub world that is used for 2 things. One is picking your partner. Oh, you thought you would be able to pick your partner? No. You play a crane game for one that randomizes the partner that you have to lug around. I got Knuckles and used him for my entire playthrough out of fear I would get a worse partner. What is that, a fucking bee? Fuck no. You might be asking, well, if you mentioned earlier how awesome everyone was, then how can a different character be worse? I failed to mention 2 other characters you can obtain as partners, but are not playable. These characters are Bomb and Heavy. They are exactly what you think they are. Heavy is a big ass dude who actually hinders your performance while you play the game because he is slow. And then there is Bomb, who explodes when he takes damage and it also hurts you. Fantastic way to make your game so enjoyable. Let's add 2 characters who stop you from having fun. Dumb fuck. After acquiring a partner, you actually get a stage select. Sort of. It is randomized what zone you get, so you will play any of these 5 zones randomly. Let's take a look at these stages. It is visually overwhelming in some of these. It has such a style of art that everything looks so fever dreamish, which in some areas it looks really cool, and in a lot of other areas it can be very confusing. Seriously, some of these stages can be super colorful, and a lot of the time the pathways are very confusing. It is definitely one of the most unique looking Sonic games at this point in time, and I think it has a lot to do with being on the 32X attachment and them wanting to really push and show the new hardware. More on that later. I also noticed a lot of these stages vary in length from minutes to seconds. Something super important to note, while playing this game, each zone has 5 acts. This game feels terrible to play because the randomizer I mentioned earlier is, well, random. You can get a variety of levels, but if you have luck like mine, you can get a bunch of levels back to back from the same zone. And it makes the game feel long visually, and sometimes from a design standpoint, barely feel any different. They could have easily made an extra act and add 3 levels to that, and reduce all the other acts to 3 levels as to not make the game feel so repetitive. Most of the stages are pretty easy, very standard Sonic gameplay. I only have a gripe with one zone and all 5 of its acts. Amazing arena. In this zone, you have to find a specific machine and press a button that does nothing other than turn on the color? Seriously, all it does is turn on the color in the level and nothing else. I accidentally made the mistake of not finding the machine, and I happened to get to the end of the act and it told me to do it again because I didn't press the button. Awful. In all the Sonic games, there is usually a collectible to obtain the Chaos Emeralds, or in Sonic CD, the Time Stones. Well, in this level, you can enter special stages very similar to Sonic 1, where as long as you have 50 rings, you can jump into a giant ring above the goal. Wow. What in the cool math games am I looking at? Very simple special stage, where you collect rings to extend your timer, and collect blue balls before you reach the goal. I would say this is very easy for a special stage because as long as you have enough rings for the timer, you can keep looping back around to the start to collect the required amount of blue balls you need. The difficulty comes in the geometry hell you have to figure out and navigate. It can get very distracting and sometimes you can't even tell what you're looking at, making it a little tough to collect the chaos rings. The fucking MacGuffin rings are what Robotnik needs to rule whatever this place is. Mobius? Maybe Mobius? I don't know. Wait, I think that's a Kentako hut there. Finally, we can talk about the bosses. There is a boss on Act 5 of every zone, and each boss has a cutscene. While not much, it really takes the drag of all the levels and makes it feel worth it just to see the little animation play before a boss. All bosses are even insanely well animated and graphically cool looking. And maybe they got a little carried away because they spent way too long showing you this fucking 3D Microsoft spinning shape that you can't damage until it opens up. Eggman in a prism. Eggman in a prism. Once you're all done with the first 5 zones bosses, when you enter the hub, your next boss is Metal Sonic. He is quite awful as a boss and quite disappointing. Basically, you play roulette where the stage select would normally have been, and each number correlates to an attack Metal Sonic performs if you land on it. Your goal is to land on the X and it will remove 1 number at a time. This boss fucking sucks robofuck, dude. It is possible that you can land on nothing but numbers and make no fucking progress in the boss fight, and you just have to keep hoping that you can time it just right to land on the X. This is the definition of a time vampire. Once you're done with that, you get to the final boss, Metal Sonic Kai, who is like one of the best metal forms out there. He is massive and looks scary as hell. He has 2 phases, attacking from the side and attacking from the background. He's a pretty easy boss, but that's only at the fault of being able to throw your partner to avoid taking damage. Once you beat the game, hey, guess who shows up? Tails and Sonic with no pants? Bro is straight up naked at the Mobius meetup. Not only did bro not help Knuckles stop Robotnik, but dude showed up late and showed up with his little chili dog out. In case you're wondering, this game did not perform very well. And it's not for the reason that you think. Knuckles Chaotix released on an add-on for the Genesis called the 32X. You shove this contraption into the top of your Genesis, and you stick the cartridge into it, and you turned your 16-bit system into a, you guessed it, a 32-bit system. Okay, so where is the problem with this? Well, 1, Knuckles Chaotix is unplayable without this attachment, which launched for 151 big ones. Ouch! And 2, on top of that, the fucking PlayStation 1 was releasing less than 2 weeks after the 32X add-on. And dear fucking lord, they were releasing the fucking Sega Saturn, their brand new console, which is a 32-bit console, by the way, 1 day after the release of the 32X add-on. This led to poor sales in the attachment itself, and in turn led to awful sales of the exclusive games to the attachment, because people were like, why should I spend $150 when I can save up another half and get the next generation of games that will last for the next 6 years minimum? The PlayStation literally made the leap to 3D graphics. Who in their right minds thought that this was a right move? Like, how fucking stupid. You know what? Let's move on. Let's just fucking move on, bro, because what the fuck?
I repeat, stay in your homes. Sonic 3D Blast has hit the mainland. The blue storm is moving unpredictably, spinning, smashing, gaining power as he tears along. If you should see an eerie gyration of light, move away. You may be witnessing the blast attack.
Play Sonic 3D Blast on Sega Channel, the only cable channel with unlimited play of over 70 games a month. Call your cable company to get hooked in.
Released on the Sega Saturn, this is Sonic's first step into 3D. As you can fucking tell by the fucking title, dude. Come on, keep up. This game starts with this odd looking intro that is hilariously ugly. Graphically, this is a pretty cool looking game. It's an isometric styled game to lean into the 3D aspect. In case you didn't know what isometric was, the camera is at such an angle where you can see the top and the sides of the stages, i.e. Zelda is viewed from the top and Sonic is viewed from the side. This has a little bit of both, and it looks pretty. And this sprite of Sonic isn't too bad. Speaking of the graphics, if you kind of look, you may notice, hey, wait a minute, this isn't actually 3D. Very smart observation of you. As you can see, there is something not right about this. So what's going on here? Well, a 3D model is being used, but not in the way that you think. Let's take a look at the technique used by Donkey Kong Country. The next big move in games was 3D. Unfortunately, technology just wasn't there yet. So developers got creative and would make 3D models and animate and export them into flat images we know as sprites. That way, it gives the illusion of being 3D while not actually being 3D. It is simply just a bunch of images of a 3D model being turned into flat images. It's very impressive. Same thing with Sonic 3D Blast. All enemies and Sonic himself are just images from an actual 3D model. This game is the most normal game I have ever played. You have one goal in this game. You must collect these little birds called flickies trapped inside enemies and guide them to an exit ring. There are 6 birds per section usually. Each zone has 2 acts and every act is split into 2 to 3 sections. These acts can be pretty long and the areas can be pretty big. This is pretty cool because the stages can feel very vast. Now, here comes the problem with that. If you were simply reaching an exit, that would typically not be an issue to traverse a big level. But in order to exit a section, you must find all the flickies in the area. Meaning, sometimes stages can be so big, some enemies containing the flickies can be hard to find, or can even be missed. Having to backtrack through these levels can be a pain in the ass. So in playing, just make sure you're checking every pathway for enemies, but I would say for the most part, most enemies are in spots that you can't miss. Another thing I wasn't particularly fond of was when you pick up the flickies, they follow right behind you until you cash them into the goal ring. If you have a bunch of flickies following you, they will follow in a line, and if you get hit, they scatter everywhere. And you have to go and pick them all up, and even worse, the flickies themselves can actually get hit by enemies and scatter on their own. You'll be walking around and then out of your control, the flickies will disperse all over the place, and it is quite annoying to have to catch them all. Especially the way Sonic controls. He is very slippery in this game. Also, Tails and Knuckles appears in this game. They kind of just hang out, but don't get too close. These motherfuckers steal your lunch money. I'm not even kidding. If you approach them, they will actually abduct the rings that you have on hand, which while playing, I had no clue why they were doing that. But after researching, they actually lead you to a bonus stage when you hand them 50 rings, which I inconveniently didn't have every time I found them. And they would just steal the rings that I have on hand, even if you don't have 50. Nintendo had Mario Teaches Typing, and Sega had Sonic Teaches Taxes. The bosses are very basic in this game. It felt like fighting the same thing over and over. In fact, I quite literally got a game over right before the final boss, and it started me all the way to Zone 1, Act 1. I am not playing all that again. So here's what I think the final boss would have looked like. Yeah, that looks right. Yeah, there is not much to say. They just want you to be in awe of the graphics. And they had a handful of unique animations for Sonic, but you can tell that there was nothing planned other than the fact that it was like, ooh, 3D. And it kind of sucks to say, because I feel like this should have been treated with much higher importance. It's super underwhelming, but I am sure at the time this was insane and well worth your money and experience. And I am right about this statement, because when this game was released, it was a huge success, and it was well sold and reviewed very well. In my personal opinion, this falls flat for me as a Sonic game because it's missing the one important thing: speed. This is what Sonic has always been about: speed. And that is completely absent here. So the main core of what made me love Sonic is missing. It kind of made it not a Sonic game to me, if that makes sense. It's like if you bought a game called Tic-Tac-Toe and you loved it so much that when you bought Tic-Tac-Toe 3D Blast, it was actually just Scrabble. Not to say making creative experimental changes to see what you can accomplish for a series is forbidden. I just feel like there should be some sort of expectation to retain a series' core values. Otherwise, it was an okay experience. Sonic the Hedgehog seriously made lots of headway and advancements in the video game genre. Lots of ups and downs for a series starting out. And it's really cool to look back and see all the steps that were taken in just a 5-year time span. We still have a long way to go. If I personally had to pick a favorite Sonic game so far, it would definitely have to be Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It is such a huge experience, and truly the definitive way to play a classic Sonic game. Up next, we will be covering, you guessed it, more Sonic games. Tomorrow, get ready for when Aidan discusses the first set of Mario games in our long marathon to play and talk about all the Mario and Sonic games. If you liked it, please leave a like. If you didn't, leave a thumbs down. And we have a lot more coming, so if you enjoy our videos, click the subscribe button. It's completely free. Comment down below your favorite Sonic game out of the ones we talked about today, and let me know memories you made from them when you played them. Alright, see you next time.